Thanks, Maggie. Welcome to our 8th Charles River Dam Advisory Committee meeting. Happy to see you all. We have 20 people in the panelists, sort of committee member and support staff realm, and another 17 people attending and observing. We're really glad to have all of you here today. We have a slightly shorter meeting than normal. This is the first meeting in a while for the committee that we haven't had a presenter, right? And sort of real focused kind of deep content. Instead, we want to loop back on and discuss several things we did since our last meeting, and then prepare you for what's coming in the next few months. And we're going to do that by doing a little bit of committee business and make space for people who went on the second round of site tours to share thoughts on the site tour. And then we're going to talk about the abutters input that we received at 2 abutters meetings, upstream and downstream, that we held mid-November. And then the staff, some of the town staff are going to share responses that followed the abutters meeting that went into a frequently asked questions document, and share some of the key contents there that the committee hasn't had time to kind of delve into too much yet. We'll talk about upcoming public input process on community use, and then we'll have time for public comment and wrap up by 5:30. So that's the plan. Any questions on the agenda? Just happy to see your faces. Okay. Members of the public, just so you have it in your mind, you can have 2 to 3 minutes to speak. If you're interested, that's going to start around 5:10. So you can prepare and think. And with that, I think, Maggie, can you put the agenda link and just the website link in the chat for everyone? The participant version of the agenda, the one that's on the website, is, well, so there's the website for the project. If anybody needs the materials from the last, all these meetings actually, plus some in between things and public input, they're all there, and the agenda link for tonight. Thank you. Let's do committee introductions quickly, I think. We'll ask committee members for your name, affiliation, and something you've been thinking about related to our decision. Just like a sentence or two, not too in depth. And I'm gonna just go loosely in order. It won't be perfect at all. Actually, I'm not going to go in order. Let me see. I need a second. Where am I going to start? I'm going to start looking at my screen. Let's go to Janine and then David Lauding.
I'm Janine Furr with the Historic District Commission. And let's see, you know, I certainly get a lot of questions about the dam from community members. People are interested and concerned about our responsibilities. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Perfect. David Lauding and then Aaron Spelker.
Yeah, hi, David Lauding. I'm with the Open Space Committee. I went on both site visits, and so I've been thinking more recently about the one we went to up in Worcester, and I'll tell you about that later.
Perfect. Thank you. Aaron Spelker and then Karen.
Thank you.
Aaron, do you want to say hello? Oh, I thought we had him unmuted for a sec. Let's go to Karen and then Jeremy, and we'll come back to Aaron.
Hello, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm not on camera. I was actually just stuck in traffic on 95. But Karen Partner, Recreation Parks Director. I've been thinking about, I still just, think about the ecology of the dam and whether restoring it to the natural state or keeping the beautification of, just weighing those two options.
Thank you. Erin, do you want to go? Oh, let's go to Jeremy and then MK.
Hello, Jeremy Marset. I'm the Director of Public Works here in Natick. I guess this past weekend I put away our canoe for the season, so I've been thinking about the recreational opportunities for both options, and looking forward to the spring when the weather gets better to take my son fishing again. So, thanks.
Thank you. MK and then David, please.
Hi, I'm Mary Kate Schneeweiss. I am the Conservation Commission representative, and I have been just thinking, similar to Karen, about the ecological impacts of both options, but also the permitting impacts of the various things that we've been discussing.
Thank you. David Blees and then Mike Balcom.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Dave Blees, an upstream abutter. I guess I've been going over our abutters meeting and the opinions and views that I heard in that meeting. It was a great meeting. I think lots of questions were asked and some issues were allayed. I think people were happy to get their thoughts and concerns out on the table, but I'm really not sure if any opinions were changed. And I think we're all kind of anxiously wondering what this third option review might bring forth.
Thank you. Mike.
Hello?
And then Erin.
Could you hear me?
Hi, why don't you go?
The whole time it said I've been unmuted, so I don't know what's going on. But here I am. Aaron Spelker. I'm the Commission on Disability, and I've been thinking a lot about the space after whatever we do, just what it's going to be as an accessible place for all members, particularly those with disabilities. So that's been on my mind.
Thank you. Mike and then Jillian.
Yes, I'm Mike Balcom. I'm a downstream abutter. And I guess I've been thinking about how much we don't know and how early we are. I think a lot of the questions and even these third options are based on people's fear that, this committee has a decision one way or the other, and then they're going to start construction the next day. So I think, there's a whole political process to it, going through the selectmen and everything else, and then the design process for all our whatever choices we suggest. So I just think it is early in the process. So some of the details that people are worried about, their voices and their input and people's resources are going to be put on that. It's just so hard so early in the process here. We're kind of deciding on a binary decision here. So I think this is great. All this public input has been fantastic and will inform those decisions going forward. So it's great.
Thank you. Jillian and then Becca.
Hi, Jillian Wilson-Martin. I'm the Sustainability Director for the town. And I drive by the dam multiple times a day now because I recently moved to Precinct 10 in Natick. And I have been thinking a lot about all the deep work that the committee has been doing. And something that's on my mind a lot is it's a very complex issue that we're working on. And there's a lot of research that we're all doing. And it's really difficult for a member of the public to be at the same to get up to speed as much as we have gotten up to speed on it. So I've just been thinking, how can we distill what we've learned succinctly with the public to make sure everyone is informed about the journey we've been on.
Thank you. Becca and then Terry.
Sure. I am Becca Stendhal. I'm a Natick resident and involved in environmental science and communication. I think I've been thinking a lot about, again, the comments that I see as coming up as public comments, and sort of some of those things have been things that are addressed, and at what point can we sort of put a pin in those and move forward. I think reflecting on what David said in terms of people changing their minds, I don't know if we do that anymore in our culture. So I think I'm just sort of overwhelmed in terms of this process as we move forward. So I'm glad to get back into it and hopefully move forward with some resolutions.
Thank you. Terry and then Bill.
Thanks, Terry Evans. I'm the planning board representative to the committee. And I guess in some ways, what I've been thinking about a lot has to do with my role with the Historical Society, which lives right across the street from the dam. And this sense of when I talk on the Old Town walks about the history of the site and how it has changed, to understand that this very deliberation that we're taking, the exercise we're going through, as well as the eventual outcome, become part of our collective history. And that the process that we're undertaking itself becomes history for the next generation to look back on and understand.
Thanks, Terry. Bill and then Martin.
Thank you, Mona. Bill McDowell, town engineer. What I'm thinking about right now is, I know a lot of questions have been about, what is the need for this? Why are we hurrying through this? And I'm really very much appreciative of the gracious patience that I've heard from this committee, that we're not in any particular hurry, that we are finding about this, and we are actually trying to inform a decision. So I really appreciate everybody's work. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin and then Claire.
Yeah, Martin Kessel, several different relationships, town meeting, precinct 10, and downstream of Butter, and member of Open Space Committee. I would use the word that I just heard, overwhelmed, because I thought I kind of knew everything, because I've been following this process longer than this committee's been around, and I keep learning new things. The second site visit, I learned a lot, and the abutters meetings, one I attended and one I read the notes, and there's just so much information and so many opinions and so many things to consider. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Claire and then John.
Hi, everyone. Claire Rondelli, Conservation Agent, Open Space Planner for the town. I've been thinking a lot about permitting. MK mentioned the Concom perspective of things, and also just, how whatever decision we make will impact the recreational and ecological use of the area.
Thank you. John and then Seth.
Thanks, Ona. Soon to be committee member, will be voted in tomorrow. I'm thinking right now that there's been a lot of work from a lot of people put into this to understand what the best decision is for the community. I think the decision that ultimately gets made, will be with us for a long period of time. And I think with any difficult decision, it's trying to gather as much information as possible and try to make an informed decision. And I'm very glad to be part of this process, and also extremely delighted with the amount of effort and time that's been put in by the volunteers on this committee and the staff in exploring this and trying to figure out the right decision for the community. So kudos to everyone in their work, and I look forward to continuing to get caught up to speed on this and to be helpful as possible moving forward.
Thank you. Seth and then Dirk.
Well, my thought is rather recent. Seth Levine, Natick Parks and Rec Commission, also live right down by the dam. As I was walking to lunch by the dam today, I was just thinking, how do we maintain the beauty of this dam and move forward with taking care of these structural issues?
Thank you. Let's go to Dirk and then Kristen.
Let me unmute. Thank you. I echo what Martin said about learning something new every time, and I've been challenged to be at a few things, but I've caught up with recorded instances of what I've missed, and I really appreciate the thoroughness of the process going on. My interests and concerns remain what they were largely, which is really in two kind of buckets. One is to determine and do the right thing with regard to the potential for failure, catastrophe, liability around the dam. One way or another. And I am representing the Finance Committee, so I think that's a natural one. But another one that I think is also a very natural interest for the Finance Committee is, and somebody mentioned the permitting. We're going to have a bite at the apple this time, and permitting's a pretty intense thing. There's a lot of interests that weigh in and that have some authority over the kind of area we're looking at. And I really think it's important for us to do the thoroughness of the process, look at it from all the angles we're looking at it from, so that we really discern well what belongs in a recommendation at this time, and don't take something that really should be done and that we all agree would be a great thing for the town and say, let's wait, let's do it later, because there may not be a later, or there may not be a later for a very long time. So again, I appreciate the multifaceted thoroughness of the process we're going through.
Thank you. Kristen, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I joined late. My name is Kristen Wyman. I am Natick Nipmuc. Also kind of joining in a professional aspect of being in the food sovereignty sector and doing a lot of land and climate work. My apologies, I can't be on video. I'm also balancing parenting. Just also want to echo what everybody is saying around the learning, this being a really participatory, dynamic process, and just really appreciative of the opportunity to connect and hear various points of view and various, I guess, connections to this place. As a Nipmuc person, it's, folks that were able to listen to the presentation of the cultural context of that place, I just really appreciate the opportunity to share, to educate, to build awareness and community around that. And truly, this is a historic moment and process. I mean, I can really attest to that as somebody that's pretty familiar with the historical record and how this river came to be dammed. And I have a lot of hope that we are going to make a very informed and thoughtful decision in this process. And yeah, I have a lot of hope for the restoration of the land as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say that Dave Yancey let us know earlier today that he was called away to a family situation and really apologizes that he can't be here tonight. Thank you all. A little bit of committee business. We'd like to approve the meeting summary from November 9th and from the second site visit so we can post them so other people can read them. Any concerns before we do that? All right. We will consider those approved. And just quickly, an update on the meeting schedule. We are planning our next meeting, which will be about community use, on January 18th. We'll be sending out a calendar invite for that to the committee. And we are working to get the schedule past that figured out based on various strands of work that are being done to make sure that we get work completed before we come to you to discuss that work. So stay tuned and we'll talk about that a little more during the meeting. And let's talk about this site tour. Oh no, let's go first to Bill for some updates on a few related pieces of work and kind of where things stand, and then we'll do the site tour conversation. Bill.
Thank you, Ona. We've been speaking with GZA regarding the permit feasibility of alternative repair methodologies, and the committee may recall the methodologies being looked at were filling on the downstream face of the dam between Pleasant Street and the dam so that we could lose the classification of a dam, or see if that was possible to lose classification of the dam. The other option was to put sheet piling along the upstream face of the dam, steel piling with a concrete cap and filling the area in between the steel piling and the upstream face of the dam for the same reason, to see if we could get a classification that would allow us to maintain the trees on the dam and still buttress the structure. We expected that information this week. It's only Tuesday of this week. Apparently GCA doesn't know that, but they were expecting probably, I would expect I'm going to get that within the next 3 days. As soon as we get that, we will share their analysis with the committee in writing. Grant from the Division of Ecological Restoration to develop preliminary design of the spillway removal. We did receive that grant for a consultant to prepare a preliminary design of what the spillway breach would look like. That will give us a more informed opinion of probable costs. It may give us a more defined idea of what would remain of the spillway, if anything, how much of the stream would be opened up. And that would probably give us a good idea of what the flow during normal base flow conditions would look like through the spillway area. We don't have that right now. It's all speculation, but we did receive the grant. DER administers the grant and actually works with the consultant. We don't actually work with the consultant per se, but I will be in touch with Nick Wildman as far as, during that process. We do not anticipate those preliminary plans until the month of May. Which is one of the things that Maggie was talking about, these strings of work that we're looking forward to, looking at our progress moving forward. Engagement with the landscape architect, we have been speaking with Ty and Bond. This meeting was originally proposed to be a community use meeting, and Ty and Bond was going to attend that meeting and take some of that feedback that we got from the committee and from the public and turn that into their renderings of what could be possible on either the South Natick Dam Park or the Grove Park areas on either side of the dam. We're anticipating community use will now be in January, and at that point, Ty and Bond will be hired and be working with us, and they will be taking the input from that meeting. So I don't anticipate those renderings until the month of February.
Thank you, Bill. Great. With that, committee members, some of you went to a second site visit. Some of you, I think, and we have both the first site visit now and the second site visit in mind. For those of you who weren't at the second site visit, there are notes shared. And I just want to make some space for people to reflect on what they saw, what they learned, if you were there, what surprised you, kind of what do you want to bring back to the full group? We'll take a few minutes to share thoughts about this. Yes, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I wanted to share some thoughts about the second site visit to the dam in Paxton and in Worcester. So we talked to the engineer there, Chris Hake from Ty and Bond, who was the engineer on both of those dams. And we saw several methods of protecting the upstream face of the dam. We saw dumped riprap, which is what we've talked about. And we also saw an example of some carefully placed granite, either slabs or blocks, and talked about that with Chris about how that might work. And we also saw in Paxton an example of a really attractive situation where they poured a concrete dam wall and then applied stone facing to it, so it looks like a stone wall. And that was really attractive.
We have a couple pictures. Would it be an okay thing if we put them up for a moment as you're going? Great. So this is one, and the other is here. So maybe point us toward which one you have more to share about, and we can.
Well, the first, yeah, obviously that's the dumped riprap. And as you look at the spillway up on the right side, so in the far corner, there was a section where they had put some granite slabs as a protection. And then if you go back to the other one, yeah, that one, do you have I don't think you have a close-up of what the face of the dam looks like.
Not right
But,
here.
yeah, it looked like a stone wall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The other thing was that Chris talked a little bit about the decision-making in the dams, and he pointed out that scenic value was a factor in both decisions, and the decision to repair them and keep the dams. Historical importance was a factor in the Eames Mill in Paxton, and recreation was a factor for in the Patch Reservoir in Worcester. And both of those dams are publicly owned, Eames by state DCR and the Patch Reservoir by the city of Worcester. So
Great.
Interesting notes, I thought.
Thank you. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, David took a lot of what I was going to say, so it'll be brief. Yeah, the alternatives to riprap I thought was very noteworthy. That's been a stumbling block for us and a problem. So obviously we were told if nobody's going to see what you're doing, riprap is fine, it's cheap. But if somebody's going to see it, it's a scenic attraction. There's much better alternatives that just happen to cost a bit more, various levels of costing more. And as far as the reasons for preserving and repairing the dam, I think this was really useful to see other communities come up with scenic, recreational reasons that they thought were compelling. Because we haven't talked about those particularly much yet. Obviously, each situation is different. Ours will be different as well. But our spillway is an attraction, as was the one at the Moore State Park, and we also have a kind of a recreational lake. It's not quite as big as the reservoir in Worcester, but it's sort of similar. It has the butters and it has people on the water, so that that will be a consideration for us, and I'm not sure we'll come up with the same result, but definitely a factor to consider.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, I think that's basically it.
That's great. And I'm reminded that riprap isn't common terminology for everyone. So that's those big rocks that were all sort of laid to hold the soil back by the water in those pictures. David, go ahead.
Yes, I think on the same subject, the Paxton Mill. I think in your picture there's a little area there that shows the stone where it's been knuckled and placed, and it actually looks pretty good. And a point I took, I was chatting with Bill about it, and he said, well, in our case, it's going to be about the same as that. The stone shouldn't be more than 2.5 feet above water level in average conditions, which actually for me was quite encouraging. It's I had this vision, I think, much more like the embankment, with that hideous industrialized riprap. If we spend the extra money and the extra time to do the natural stone that's knuckled in, it looks a hell of a lot better.
Thank you. Others? Yeah, Bill.
Thank you, and I appreciate the input by David and Martin and David. Excuse me, but regarding the dumped riprap as we saw at the Worcester Reservoir, that is very representative of what the typical installation would be. So I think people really got a good look at that, and not in the context of a highway embankment, as I apparently said at one meeting and has yet to be forgotten. However, there are other options, and speaking to somebody who is both a dam preservation specialist, the engineer, and the landscape architect, there were a number of different methodologies that could be used. And the reason for the stone is just to protect that upstream face from the soil erosion that it faces. So I was glad to hear that other people were noticing that, and that they did get that information from that particular site visit, because there are options. It was not what was as part of our design, but it certainly could be part of our design moving forward. That's just a small aspect of the work where we could elect to repair the dam.
Thank you. In a minute or two, we want to go to we'll shift to talking about the input from the abutters. But final comments, yeah, Jillian, go ahead.
Sure. You might, instead of a dog, you might hear some children in the background here. I took away a couple of additional things. The Eames Mill Dam, the first one, was really a beautiful location. And in many ways, I didn't feel like it was comparable with the dam we're looking at, not because of the beauty, because ours is definitely beautiful, but because of the ecological aspects of it and the topography. So it was very, there was big changes in elevation at that site, and there was another dam immediately downstream. You could walk to it. You could see it from the first dam. So the benefits of removing that first dam that we really looked at and saw that beautiful spillway, that is really different than what we're looking at here. And it's fed by I think it's an unnamed stream, or a stream that's it's not part of a main stem river. So I think that's something to note. And then at the Paxton, or the Patch Reservoir Dam, something that really kind of stuck with me is Chris Haker was really clear about the dam on trees policy, and even to the point that along that embankment where there was the dump riprap, he inspects that dam as well. And there was some growth that had occurred, and he said that there really should be no growth at all. So just, to me, that was really a reminder that that's something that we would need to realize will go into decision about our dam if we were to repair it, that we would have those limitations on any kind of growth on the surface of the embankment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, as with the other site visit, as other things come to mind, feel free to thread them through the conversation, and we hope that we keep just sort of accumulating our collective knowledge and understanding about what's possible and what makes sense, where and under what conditions. And we want to make enough time and space to hear from the abutters, and maybe Jillian, you can respond to Becca's question about whether that includes grass, but we're going to shift to the abutters, and I'm going to go to Maggie to share some themes of what we learned at these two meetings.
Hi all, this is going to be very high level, but these conversations, we had two conversations, one on November 15th with upstream abutters and one on November 16th with downstream abutters. And both conversations were about 2 hours long. And after I kind of share some of the big themes that we heard, I'll also kind of turn to some of our advisory committee members that were in those meetings to see if they have any additional context or thoughts to add. First, I just kind of wanted to start with some things that were some big focuses in the different meetings. So in the downstream meeting, we heard a big focus on kind of the safety and risk considerations regarding flooding and dam failure. People were posing questions about the town's liability, about how the town kind of came to be in this situation where it was out of compliance due to the tree growth. Questions about how or if spillway removal could impact flood risk, and kind of larger scale questions about how climate change could impact flooding and dam failure considerations. In the upstream meeting, there was a large focus on how a spillway removal scenario could affect property, including ownership and taxation and property value. And we had Eric Henderson there, who's the director of assessing, kind of spoke to that a little bit, as well as the management of invasive species in a restoration scenario. Also in the upstream meeting, there was a focus and kind of conversation around different perspectives of what people would like to see on or near their properties and like what they would consider beautiful. Some people named the importance of the visual and sound barrier that the trees provide between the major roadways in that area. And other folks named how beautiful and valuable they found the impoundment area. And there were also some themes that cut across and were raised in both meetings. a big discussion around kind of the ecological health of the area and how removing the spillway and restoring the river to a more natural flow could benefit that health. There are questions about kind of public health considerations and how either option could impact toxic algal blooms and the flow of water and sediment. Downstream and upstream abutters really wanted to know kind of what the river would look like under either scenario, but especially the spillway removal scenario, being far less familiar with kind of visualizing that. People wanted to know more details about kind of how fast the water would be flowing, kind of the depth that the river would be and how wide it would be. Folks requested more visual renderings about what the site could look like from different angles with either scenario. And there were questions raised about navigability and paddling and a lot of the things that we've raised in these sessions as well. There were questions that kind of Bill spoke to in his initial kind of update slide about how the town is considering different design approaches to either removal or repair options. So kind of the GZA permitting work that's being done, and whether the town is able to develop more comprehensive detailed cost estimates for both options, because concerns were raised that initial cost information that was shared was not maybe comparable. And I think Bill spoke to that a little bit too, with kind of getting a more designed spillway removal scenario to kind of get a little bit at more of those details. And I realized that what I just shared is a bunch of kind of themes and questions and not many answers, but town staff did respond to questions in the meeting when able, and then they took back kind of the questions they received and developed an FAQ to be shared more broadly, and they'll be presenting on that in a little bit. But I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the most frequent concerns, questions, and comments we heard from folks. But I do want to stop talking and open it up to some of our committee members that were in those meetings and helped plan those meetings. So I don't know if David Blees or Mike Balcom or Martin Kessel or Janine Fuhrer, if you all want to kind of share what your big takeaways were.
Should I raise my hand?
Feel free to jump on in.
Two things, I think. I think from the upstream abutters, our perspectives, our opinions change as we move upriver. You know, those of us very close to the spillway, we're looking across at the dam, the trees, the reflections in the pond. That's what makes up our view and what makes this our view so special. As you move up around the corner, you don't see the dam so much. Now you're concerned about the impoundment area, launching your canoes, your view across that water, the reflections of the trees on the far bank and so on, but not necessarily the dam. That's my opinion anyway. So as I said, I think that, I don't think that many opinions were changed in the abutters meeting, but a lot of good information was imparted, and I think people took it on board. Let's see what else. I did make some notes earlier. Yeah, I guess I suspect that most of us, given the choice, which we might not have, we'd like things to remain the same, of course. We bought and upgraded our properties because of our river views. You know, and in my case in particular, it's all about the reflections of the trees on the dam in the still pond. So again, anxiously awaiting to see whether we can keep both with a third option, even if it requires removing all the trees to do the engineering work. Maybe the landscapers can come back and we can plant screens and introduce some deciduous trees that will restore those reflections later on.
Thanks, David.
That's it.
I can speak about downstream issues. The people downstream are totally concerned about safety and flooding issues and concerns about the liability of the town should there be a problem that ensues. we've been told that there won't be a change in the flooding after and if the spillway is removed. And so that was kind of the takeaway I had. But it seemed, based on the correspondence I read, that not everyone believes what they've been told about that. But we'll see what you can tell us about that. As a historic district commission member, I would be more concerned about the appropriateness of an alternative look to the area. And the dumped riprap would be, in my opinion, inappropriate. And so I underline that as a concern. And from the point of view of recreation in Natick, I would lament the loss of the basin, which I feel people go to kind of transcendentally commune there, and trees also. And I would want option C to kind of enable people to still gather and appreciate nature, and be able to be close and interact the way they do in the current situation.
Thanks, Janine. Mike or Martin? Oh, yeah, Martin, I see your hand. Oh, just remember to unmute there.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. Mike is the one that I'm actually referring to some of the interaction that we had at our meeting with Mike. Both of us are downstream abutters. We live 2 houses away, and we were talking at our meeting about the kind of difficulty in navigating up the river from where we are to the Pleasant Street Bridge and beyond. And we realized that that difficulty is kind of profiled. There was one slide that had a profile of the river, particularly downstream of the dam, where it showed a 2-foot drop over about 100 or 200 yards. And that drop in the river caused the difficulty in navigation with ruffles and shallow water at times. During high water, you can do it, but it's really fast and it's hard to get up. So I was thinking that we really were unsure. I don't think we ever got an answer as to really what the river depth or river speed would be upstream of the present dam site. It seemed to me that there's a 6-foot drop that's going to occur. The river level is 6 foot higher at the back at the footbridge than it's going to be at Pleasant Street. So it's got to come down at some point. Where would that change occur? Will it be quick? Will it be slow? But what I haven't seen is a profile of the river bottom, basically a topographical map of the river bottom for that whole half-mile stretch from the footbridge down to Pleasant Street and even as far as our street. And that might give enough information to provide a computer model of what the water level would be as the water flows over that distance. And that might give us information about the depth and about the speed that the river is flowing, which might tell us the navigability. So we've been trying to get at the answer to this question. I've felt we haven't, and maybe there is information on the profile of the river bottom, kind of as it goes down, or as you look down and see a topographical image that could give us some information on that.
Thanks for raising that, Martin. I think that desire to kind of better understand that and maybe have some visuals to accompany it is something that we definitely heard loud and clear in past advisory committee meetings and in the abutter sessions. And I think the town staff is kind of working with some technical partners maybe to kind of get some clear kind of visuals and answers to that. And we can keep that as an important kind of open thread to answer. Mike, did you want to share anything coming out of the abutter sessions?
Yeah, let me. I'm here.
There you are.
Thank you. Yeah, to Martin's point, for sure, I think that's a great unknown, and it would belay a lot of concerns if we knew more about how that river, the character of the river is going to be as it flows from the footbridge right through Pleasant Street Bridge. You know, the river as a whole is a meandering river, as we all know. It's very slow, and it drops about on average about almost 4.5 to 5 feet per mile. So if to the footbridge is a half mile, 6 feet within that is certainly more of a drop than the average of the river. But I don't know what that means, and I also am not convinced that it is 6 feet to the footbridge. I know the GZA report said something fairly vague that it wouldn't, by sight, you wouldn't notice the difference above the footbridge. But does that mean that it's gonna, you know, that is the 6 feet mark? I don't think it is. Historically, there have been complaints when other dams were removed. There's been complaints much farther upriver on the river lowering. You know, I mean, real historically, like 1700s and so forth. So I think that's something that we need to look into rather than just crossing our fingers on that thing. And I guess the second point is, and kind of relates to this, is it would be nice to put to bed the concerns of what the river is going to look like downstream. I've heard the word rapids and danger and things like that. And I think we really need to put that to bed, because obviously if that is in play, that is something we should be concerned about. I don't think it is. I've been told. I've been researching other dam removals, and on these run of the river dams, downstream isn't affected when it comes to water level, volume, or speed of the water. So I think somehow, I don't know if there's an engineering report. There's certainly logic and precedent that has informed me, but if there's something that can allay the concerns of some residents, saying that, you know, that all of a sudden, you know, children are going to be swept into the river downstream, I think we should answer that. And then I guess my last point is, I kind of made it in the entrance there, that, you know, there's so much we don't know, and it's so great that we're plodding through this to find this information out. I mean, we have a first option. I think we just learned as a committee, at least I did, as an individual on the committee, that people would be happy with some alternatives to the riprap that are out there. And that's a great thing. And that's the first option. And boy, you know, that certainly was a big concern of mine, right? To be looking across the river, the mill pond, and looking at that, I think we would have done the town disservice there. So a nice, that stone wall option or the laid granite option sounds, and for the upstream abutters that'll be looking at it every day, I certainly appreciate that they see that as a positive. And then the second option that we're toying with here, we're not even going to get preliminary drawings about that until May. So I guess that kind of just puts into perspective to me that this is a process, and it's a long process. And the concern, I've talked to a number of people that had some urgency of their concern, like this process was going to get away from them and something was going to happen next week. So these are great issues that we need to work through. And if the spillway is removed, and by the time that decision comes, I'm sure we'll have a really good idea of what that river is going to look like, what the character of the river is going to be, how navigable is it in slow water times. You know, who knows, when the river's high, no one's on that river, no matter where you are. So, and then of course the third option now is just being looked into. So certainly I look at this as in a timeline that we're certainly early in the process. We're finding out great information, and you know, we may need expert and certifiable reports to back up some of these things as we go forward, and those will take time. So I really appreciate the input though on the visit. I wasn't able to make it to the dam repair visit, so I really appreciate the input from that, and we'll put that in the knowledge base. And
Thank you. Great, thanks, everyone. I think let's pick up a couple of those threads. We want to go to town staff to respond to a few things, and some of these issues that have been coming up from the public comment that you all received today, earlier in the day, from the abutters meeting. In particular, I want to go first to Bill, and then I would like to see, Bill, if you could talk a little bit more about the preliminary design, kind of this new grant, and what it might, sort of what we might find out about, I don't know, the profile of the river, the depth and speed, all that kind of piece. And then we want to pick up a concern that's been raised about safety and rapids and address that and really try to talk about it really cleanly as much as we can. And then we want to talk about a wildlife question. And then we want to go to the FAQs, which is, again, a series of questions. So this is where we're going in the next 15 minutes or so. Town staff, it's going to be a little bit tight for time. So
I was just going to say, you asked me all those questions. You say, okay, you got 5, go.
I know, sorry, Bill. Can you would you please start with the, what you think this new grant that we just got will be able to tell us about the sort of profile of the river and the preliminary design work? Some of these questions, I think, relate to that.
Sure. As far as the preliminary design for the breach, a lot of what that's going to have to do with is the shape of the now curved dam, the spillway that you see, the OG curve that they've got. And when I say the shape, I mean the side shape of it, the section of it, how much work it's going to be entailed to hammer that concrete out and take the footings out as well. In that particular case, the preliminary design will also give us an idea or an option of how much of the spillway would have to be removed. The analysis that GZA did and the profile that Mike Balcom has brought up on a couple of occasions was a analysis of how much of the spillway would be required to be removed in order to declassify the structure as a dam. And what it turned out was just slightly over 50% of the dam would need to be removed in order to lower the water level enough to declassify that structure, the earthen portion of the dam, as a dam. So that's all they were doing with that profile. That profile, the river bottom was taken from USGS, United States Geological Survey, information regarding the river bottom that was not done from GZA's sediment probes in that area. So it's to say it's inexact is probably the best word for it, as far as taking direct elevations from that particular profile, where in the downstream portion of that below the spillway, that information is taken basically from same source, USGS, but that was a measurable entity. So that area that you see downstream of the dam does drop that 1.5 feet within approximately, I believe it was 150 to 160 feet. That is known. When I spoke to GZA regarding the profile of the river, their profile was to determine the sediment depth below surface. So they did the amount of sediment that was there. So their river profile is to the top of the sediment, not to the bottom of the river. When the spillway, or if the spillway is breached, you may recall that Nick Wildman talked about the river draws down and then it slowly starts to erode the sediments, and it literally creates a new riverbed through the sediments, depending on the density of those sediments. Whatever moves more easily, the water will erode that away and literally will create a new riverbed under low flow circumstances. So when they were asked that question of the sections of the river, what would that look like at low flow? Their answer by necessity had to be, we don't really know. When it comes to how wide the extent of that river will be, they have a pretty good idea, but that's based on what they assume the sediment, how it will erode, how deep that river channel will carve itself into the sediment.
So I think for the moment, can we take it as there's still a request for more on this, and we're not sure how to get it or what to get, but there's a real hunger for some more detail. And I don't think we should go back and forth and try to sort it out now. I think the staff should take it back to the planning board and go, what can we say? What can we do to help get this clear as we can? We know we can't, and it makes sense that a river is going to weave itself. But
Thank you. And I appreciate that, Anna. We have gone back to GZA to see what it is we can do to get that a little more narrowed down, because I do understand the upstream abutters were looking for that. What will be the extent of the river? And I understand GZA's standpoint of like, we don't want to put out something that is incorrect. So we are working with them to get a better idea of what the extent of the river will be under base flow, normal flow conditions.
Thank you.
As far as for the shape of the river downstream of the dam, that will ultimately depend on how much of the spillway is declared to be taken out. The narrower I make that channel, the faster the water would travel through that. And so the faster the water travels through that, the less navigable that's going to be in an upstream direction. There will be no more rapids created below the spillway than are there now based on the flow of the river now. It could be designed in such a way that you actually narrowed the spillway to create that. However, that's not the intention. Right now, the design is based on an almost complete removal of the spillway. There would probably be a couple of feet on either side of that just to kind of bolster up the embankment walls on the north and south face of the river. To get that close to that stone and masonry wall, you've all seen the condition of the wall. We prefer to keep that wall in good stead. So we're very likely going to leave a small amount of the spillway on either side of the river, and the river will flow through that.
Go ahead, Mike, and then we're going to go, if there's anything else to say on safety, and then wildlife.
Yeah, I think Bill just kind of answered that. I didn't realize that it was a real option to keep a lot of the spillway there. I think it would just look funny with, these cement walls coming in and narrowing and speeding the river. So it sounded like the answer. I took it initially that it was more of an engineering exercise of, how much could we take away and still not classify the earthen dam as a dam. So, but thanks, Bill.
Thank you. So safety, the issue of safety has come up a few times related to the term rapids in some of the public comment, especially. Anybody on staff willing to respond sort of directly to that?
I'm willing to.
Able to?
Oh, okay, sure. Maybe. When I spoke with, I believe it was the downstream abutters meeting where that was brought up, and there was a question as to whether or not there would be rapids generated by the removal of the spillway. And at that point, it was stated that the representative from DER, Nick Wildman, had noted that there would be rapids, and he had noted a particular classification of rapids. I did go back to that meeting just to review that, and that was not what was discussed, because at this point we don't know what the river would look like based on the lack of a spillway design. If I made it the entire width of the river, there would not be rapids associated with that. During certain flow conditions, the water would be chuckling around the rocks downstream of what is the spillway face now. However, they wouldn't be considered to be rapids. Were I to try to create something that created rapids, that can be designed into it, but that was never the intention. So I know that at that point, the term rapids was brought up by the person who was asking the question and not by Nick Wildman himself. And so it is not our intention to create rapids of any kind of classification. And certainly we wouldn't be able to classify that until we actually knew what the flow conditions were, et cetera, what the rocky conditions would be downstream of the dam face. So I do want to clear that up. There would not be rapids in the term, nor would there be a classification for those rapids, such as a class 3 rapids, which is what was brought up.
Thank you. I want to ask just the sort of idea of dam or no dam being safer. Is there this clear thing we can say on that?
I think, Ona, if you don't mind if I jump in terms of safety regarding whether the spillway is removed or the dam is repaired, I think this is a large, free-flowing water body. There are going to be safety risks with any interactions with it. Personally, based on all of the information that we've received as a committee and we've received as staff, I don't see any increase in safety risks with one option or the other. There are just going to be sort of the general associated risks of people interacting with a large water body. Obviously, the spillway is infrastructure. There might be additional risks that are associated with infrastructure that would not be there if the spillway were to be removed. But I don't think that's something that can be, specifically defined or calculated.
Thank you.
I would just add that when we went to that site visit in Andover, we were made aware of the signs that are posted ahead of dams being in a river. And we were, some of the members in Andover shared with us that there have been drownings at their dams. So there are known hazards of having spillways in free flowing rivers. But I would echo Claire's points.
Yeah, and when that dam was built, one of the things in the goals of that was to create a swimming area in the mill pond, and they quickly realized that, swimming right above a spillway is probably not a good idea, and there have been incidents over the years. So, as far as that's a known danger. I guess we don't know without the spillway exactly what those dangers would be.
Thank you. I want to ask a wildlife question and see if Claire or Jillian can respond. The issue in the abutters meeting came up about habitat for wildlife and sort of how the options would affect that. Can one or the other of you respond to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So obviously riverine corridors provide a significant amount of habitat for a variety of different animals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, fish. Wetlands also provide a significant amount of habitat, and we have, seen just based on the soil testing that it does seem like should the impoundment area be drawn down, that the land that is revealed will resemble what is known as a bordering vegetated wetland, and will have many of the characteristics of a bordering vegetated wetland, including the wildlife habitat value. From my experience, from a wetlands perspective, from an environmental perspective, I don't see any large impact on the wildlife habitat and the wildlife value of the impoundment area. There will be different wildlife using that area based on, the riverine conditions. There might be more fish traveling through the corridor, but, we see similar wildlife interacting with the impoundment area that we see interacting with the river, both upstream and downstream of the existing dam structure. So I think it's important to realize that, just because we're draining down the impoundment area does not mean that we are going to chase away all of the wildlife. There will be continued use by wildlife, maybe in some different ways and different wildlife, but there will definitely continue to be use of the riverine corridor by wildlife.
To be clear, you mean if we did that path. Sorry, go ahead, Jillian, and then Becca.
Sorry, can Becca go first and ask the question?
Becca.
So I was just going to say too, there was a comment in the public comments that were sent out around concern around destroying the sort of ecological habitat that was there. And I made note of that in my brain because I do remember the ecologist from UMass did talk about how biodiversity is actually likely to go up, and it will be a more healthy environment should the spillway be removed. So that was one of those pieces where I feel like we've actually heard the opposite from scientists.
Yeah, I would echo what Becca is saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was interrupted. We had gotten a public comment about this, I think after our last meeting, and I reached out directly to Nick Wildman from the Division of Ecological Resources on it, and he reminded me of what was shared, as Becca was mentioning, in our ecological meeting, and gosh, feels like forever ago, but only in October. And there was data that was shared by Dr. Allison Roy on behalf of Mass Fish and Wildlife. The presenter from Mass Fish and Wildlife we had arranged wasn't able to be there because of a family emergency. And she shared the data on the different species of fish that are in the river and how it would be the same species tomorrow, but they would be in a more stable and healthy habitat. And Nick also confirmed that some of our, like favorite bird watching, like blue heron, those we see downstream of the river and upstream of the river, and they would continue to thrive in this in a changed environment should that be the direction that the town pursues.
Thank you. I'm now regretting that we shortened the meeting because now it feels very quick and I want to make sure we have time for these key pieces. Thanks everyone for trying to really pinpoint a few of those questions. I want to ask if members from the public, I just want to gauge time for a moment. If you are thinking of that you would like to make public comment verbally today, could you raise your virtual hand? Can they do that, Maggie? Is that something they can, like, what's the easiest way?
Yes, they should be able to do that now. If you are on the phone, that is *9. If you are on Zoom, in your toolbar, wherever you see kind of your mute and your unmute or your other kind of controls, you should be able to see raise hand. We've got one person already.
If you'd like to make public comment tonight, if you can just raise your virtual hand so we can manage time appropriately. Looks like a couple of people. Great, thank you. We will go to you before long. You can keep your hands raised. I want to take just a few minutes with the town staff to introduce a FAQ document that was just released and is posted on the website. And this followed the abutters meetings. It was an attempt to really respond to some of the big questions that were asked and that we've heard and put the responses in one place. And Jillian or somebody else want to sort of share high level what's there? I don't think we have time to go much into it, but like kind of a few key things would be helpful, and we can put up slides if that's useful.
Sure, I can just walk everyone through it. I helped assemble the FAQs, which were written by all the town staff you see here, including town council and Eric Henderson, our director of assessing, who is also on. And if you don't mind pulling the slides up, I don't have them handy, but there were 10 FAQs that we officially answered, and they are very much a moment in time. So if the facts change as we learn more, we would like to just clarify that we could choose to edit these FAQs based on what we learn if anything changes. The first 5 of the FAQs are all questions that we heard a lot from abutters, but are actually questions that we very much have answered, at least to some degree, and often in depth in our issue-based meetings with our guest speakers and our experts. So for those 5, I would refer the committee is please, you're welcome to review the FAQs. I don't believe you will learn much by reading those 5. They're things that we've all talked about regularly. And then the second 5, numbers 6 through 10, these are much more related to individual properties or how change or in either direction, the dam removal or spillway removal or dam repair would change or change the river and the properties along the river, how they would experience the river. So we have a question about what would happen to the parks and conservation land and how that might be staged in terms of thinking about the area as a whole, the recreational value of the river and access related to canoes and kayaks. We spoke at length with town council and our director of assessing regarding ownership of any exposed land should the spillway be removed, as well as how property taxes may or may not change in the event of dam repair or spillway removal. And the last question that we were able to answer this time was related to use of the property on newly exposed land and how that would be subject to the same regulations that are already existing for land that is adjacent to the river. So that, I don't know if you want to go into any of the answers, Ona, but that's, I think, an overview of the questions.
Thank you, Jillian. I don't think we can. Best laid plans. So thank you, town staff, for your willingness to do that. Committee, I would say, please take a half an hour, read through the responses sometime in the next few weeks. And if you have questions, pick up the phone, call town staff, call Maggie and me, email us, and we can have some conversation about any of this and try to clarify things, and we can pick it up again as needed. Many of these questions are kind of ongoing discussions also. I think we can take down the slide, please. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. This is like, I feel like we've been around the world and back again. And I want to let you know a little bit about what is coming next in terms of our community use meeting, and then we'll go to public comment. We are going to talk next at our next meeting in January about what you all would like to see in terms of recreation and features and functions in this place we're talking about, in the water, on the land, in either case. And that really the conversation comes partially out of all of our work on wanting enhanced options. I think part of the enhanced options you've talked about is like what would be included, what could be in either case. And so the way we're going to do that is in the next day or so, we're going to post a simple public survey. We are going to ask advisory committee members if you'd help us get the word out and spread that link when you get it. We'll also send it to our email list, which I want to say is some hundreds of people. So we'll make sure that that goes out and it goes on the website. And we'll give people until early, like I think first or second week in January to fill that out. It should be a 5-minute thing for people, or 10 minutes. We'll synthesize that. So we all, and also we'll remind you that in our summer survey, the sort of long report, there was quite a lot about what matters to people and what they want to see there. Hi, Jillian's person. And then we'll have a big conversation about recreational use in January. So that's where we're headed. So look for that survey, spread the word when it comes out. We'll do our best to spread the word also. And I think that's all I want to say. There any questions about that? Should be fairly straightforward. I want to thank several committee members have given us feedback on it, and want to appreciate those of you who've done that for your time and good thinking, making sure that we get it good. All right, let's go to public comment. We will take Tom Palmer and then Ann Geisler. So Tom, let's enable you to speak. You can have 2 or 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I don't need 2 or 3 minutes. I just have a question. I have not been able to attend all of these, but I have attended some, and I haven't heard any mention at all of the abutter downstream that owns water rights to that dam, and how much there has been presentations on cost of doing one option or the other option, but that element of cost has not been included in anything I've heard. And if I've missed it, I'd just like somebody to tell me what that cost would be estimated at to pay them for the removal of their water rights, which are not in use right now, but they do have rights to them.
Thank you. Anybody want to respond to that on the?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring it up too before the end of this meeting. It's the verbiage that I've seen is that it's 22 Pleasant Street, that canal that connects upstream and downstream and kind of circumvents the dam. At one point, they used that canal to power some things they needed on that property. And the way I read it here says the property's deed ensures jurisdiction not only over all mill structures and dams on the site, but of the water rights, riparian rights, and all other privileges and appurtenances thereto belongings. So, that's obviously old time legal speak, but it's, I don't know if it's still relevant. I talked to the current owner. It's just been a recent change, and there is something in that he does have something in his that he is aware of, that he so I don't know if it's been looked into. I don't,
Yep.
so.
I see Karis. Do you want to respond to this? And then we'll go to Anne in just a minute. Thanks for your patience, Anne.
Yeah, thanks, Ona. Yes, we're aware of the claims and assertions, and we're looking into them. And that's really all I am comfortable saying in public at this time.
Thank you. And we'll also be looking more at costs at a future meeting more broadly. I know you mentioned that as part of costing. Thank you, Tom. Anne, go ahead. We will allow you to speak now. Anne Geisler. You want to try unmuting now?
Hi, I live at 100 Elliott Street and I've lived on the river for many years. I was in the last meeting and I read the document that was just put online with the questions and answers that you just referred to a little while ago. And I think either I was misunderstood or you misheard me, but what I was saying is that there was a noxious smell in my backyard when I step into the water, into the mud, not because the soggy soil, that it's a matter of stepping into the water and how badly the mud smells. And there's a really big difference between the soil in the backyard and then the mud in the river. The thing is that rivers without dams, the sediment flows downstream and it contributes to the health of the river. But the thing is when a dam comes down, it's common morphological science that sediment is trapped behind a dam. And for years, manufacturers have put things into this river, including Medfield State Hospital, who, by the way, would discard their pharmacological medications into the river. So, and I looked at GCI's soil report and, like Bill said, they did the surface, but they didn't do the bottom. And they also say in their report that, it's possible that we'd have to have other regulatory, they would have to come in and give us more permission to do anything more than we would do. You can't just release the sediment. Because as I started to say, and I'm trying to be clear and not too convoluted, rivers without dams flow really helpfully in terms of compared when there is a dam. The sediment gets trapped. And people talk about how healthy the river will be, but the fact of the matter is it won't be healthy right away. For a while, and especially if the sediment is toxic, it will cause a very healthy environment to exist, unhealthy rather, to exist for people as well as for wildlife. And the thing is what's done is that we have a dam and we have to think about what will happen. And we have to have more information from someone probably other than GCI, because the report they gave was very inconclusive. And they really didn't say anything. They said, they think that maybe, it's fine on both sides, but it was very nebulous. So I don't think that we should skirt past that issue, because there is liability for the town when it comes to human health consequences if this process isn't really, really thorough.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to let Bill respond briefly, and then we're going to wrap up. Thanks for clarifying, Anne.
Sure. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Anne, for your question. GZA did investigate the sediment, and what they do when they're doing a sediment investigation is they test the sediments upstream and downstream of the dam. And there were 9 sediment testing locations, 6 upstream and 3 down. And they compare the constituencies of the sediment upstream and downstream. And if there is little difference between the two, then there's considered to be no impediment to allowing the sediment, should the spillway be breached, for allowing the sediment to go downstream. That was their professional opinion. They are geotechnical engineers. They did give a pretty exhaustive list of the constituents that they tested for and the concentrations that they found in the soil, both upstream and downstream. I feel very confident regarding the sediment. And what was noted to us, anecdotally from GZA, is that the sediment is remarkably clean. And, that was their words. For the time period that the dam has been in place, which is 80 plus years. They did mention that, you know, the sediment would not be an impediment to breaching the spillway. That was the first analysis we took of that, just to see if it was even possible, feasible to breach the spillway. So I feel confident about the assay that they performed on the sediment and the levels that they checked that out as far as, you know, for the sediment, both at the top level of sediment and down in the middle and lower levels of the sediment probes. So again, with the information that we've got, and that is on the website as well, as far as, you know, what was there, what are the constituencies of the sediment, I feel very confident about the sediment is not an impediment to breach.
And Ona, if I could just jump in briefly on the smell issue, and then I'll pass back to you to wrap things up. So because the mud under the river currently is covered in water, there is an existence of anaerobic conditions that through the process of the decomposition of the organic matter that is a part of that soil does create occasionally some bad smells. Obviously, I can't guarantee this, but theoretically and based on evidence we've seen in other dam removal situations and soil exposure situations, once that soil is exposed to air and does dry out a little bit, those smells should not be an issue.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to give everybody, committee members, a final moment, and then we're going to wrap up for 2021. Shocking. Here we go. I'm going to do it in the opposite order that I did intros in, just because that's how my paper is. So that would mean Kristen and then Dirk. Final thoughts or reflections as we wrap up today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all the time and sharing of knowledge and questions and clarity that's been reached. Ona, you said, I feel like we've been around the world and back, and I think that's a great way to sum it up. So again, just appreciation to be part of this process and looking forward to continued work and the next topic that's up for our next meeting. Appreciate you all and wishing you really good holiday season with family and loved ones. Stay healthy and thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. Dirk and then Seth.
Thank you. Just quickly, I have been reviewing a lot of documents, the meeting summaries and so forth, and I greatly appreciate some of the review and response to recent concerns raised here, because it gives me a more kind of flesh and blood interactive view into some of the concerns that have been raised in the last month or so. I appreciate it.
Great, thanks. Seth and then John.
Hi, thank you everyone for their work. Seems like there's a lot of information that we're still waiting for. And once we get that, I think we could continue this journey. So thank you again.
Thank you. John and then Claire.
Thank you, Ona. There's certainly a lot of information that's been gathered to date, certainly some questions that are still outstanding. But I think that, we're working through those questions and getting the right people to help us in answering those to help make an informed decision. Obviously those they might take a little bit longer, as some additional work is undertaken, but it seems like that's the right approach to make so we make the right decision for the town.
Thank you. Claire and then Martin.
I think this meeting has been really great, like Seth said, to really get some answers to questions that have been bouncing around for a while. I really hope that folks take the time to go through the FAQ, and echoing what Ona said, please reach out if you have questions about it. We really want to make sure that we're being as clear as possible with the information that we've gathered. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful holiday season and wears their masks.
Thanks. Martin and then Bill.
Thanks, everybody, for a good meeting. It's a slow process. There's a lot there. It's just hard to believe, but I think we're making progress. So we'll be done at some point.
Bill and then Terry.
Ostensibly, we'll be done at some point. I really appreciate everybody's curiosity and everybody's enthusiasm that they bring to these meetings. It has made this a pleasure to be part of. However, I understand there are more questions that need to be answered. we will continue in this process. So I wish everybody a blessed holiday season and stay healthy.
Thank you. Terry and then Becca.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of thank everyone for kind of taking so seriously all the questions of the abutters, interested parties, and giving them the kind of gravity and attention that they've asked for, because I think respecting concerns has been a hallmark of this process so far. And I just to say that I think it's very valuable in trying to understand both concerns and kind of supportive grounds. And thank you for the FAQs, which I thought were a really useful, almost like a tip sheet in a way, for the sorts of questions I think all of us may be asking, or in more cases are likely to be asked by others. So thank you, and here's to a good 2022, not just that far away.
Thank you. Becca and then Jillian.
To echo others, I do appreciate the conversation today around separating the fact versus opinion or rumor. So it's nice to see that progress. I'm looking forward to focusing on this area as a community resource again as we go into next month, and remembering that it's Natick's resource, and looking ahead to that conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Jillian and then Mike.
Hi, I agree with what most folks have said and just wish everyone a happy holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike and then David, please.
Yeah, another great meeting. Thank you to CBI. I think this process has been fantastic. I think we were productive today, but there's certainly a lot of work left to do, as some of these open-ended questions have revealed. But I am really looking forward to next month's the community use, and I think we'll get a good view of kind of the possibilities of this space for for the future. So that'll be an exciting meeting, and I hope everyone has a great holiday season.
Thank you. David, please, and then MK.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and others, for reminding me and everybody else, I guess, that we're not hurtling towards a decision in early spring, and that this is a process that is going to be with us for a while. So let's keep on plodding in the new year, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks. MK and then Jeremy.
Yeah, just hoping that we can keep this energy up, because it's really easy for people to fall off in the long haul. So I'm excited that people are still as curious as they are. I hope you all enjoy your holiday.
Thank you. I think we don't have Jeremy actually. Karen and then Aaron.
Ooh, I didn't get a warning, so just jump right in. I just repeat everything that everybody else said too. The process has been great. I love hearing about everybody's perspectives and everybody's different points of view and questions. And as a Recreation Parks Director, I'm looking forward to what the future does hold for this area, regardless of which way we go. It's going to affect us. So I'm looking forward to next month's discussion.
Thanks, Karen. Aaron and then David Lotting.
I'd like to just thank everybody on the committee and in the town, and engaging in this process. There are a lot of differing viewpoints. Unfortunately, we probably aren't going to be able to please everybody, but I hope everybody realizes, all the effort that's going into take in all the concerns and try to really just do what's best for the town. And happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you. David Lotting and then Janine.
Yeah, hi, I have just a random thought. I lived for a while just down the street on Pleasant Street from the dam, and I've long thought that Grove Park was mostly neglected area. And I'm wondering if just clearing some of the underbrush and invasives would help for people to understand the topography of that area, especially the Eddy area just before the bridge. Anyway, see you all next year.
And Janine.
I just want to thank everybody. Seeing the problem statement as we have on the committee, where we look at it microscopically, we look at it from a fish point of view, we look at it from a physical point of view, we've looked at it and we continue to look at it from the human user point of view, now the community point of view. It's just a marvelous education about this particular little and beloved area. So I'm here for the long run. Let's stay healthy. Have a happy new year.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think January 18th is our next meeting. So put that in your brains. And then I just want to name, I know we're talking about this longer timeline now. We are also sensitive to the fact that the vast majority of you on this are volunteering your time, and we don't want to abuse that. So it may be that if work products are coming in the later spring, we want to think about some kind of pause. We're not sure. We need to think about it a little bit, but we definitely don't want to meet just for meeting's sake. We want to keep meeting to layer on the meaning and interpretation and understanding of the committee until we're really ready to make a decision. So we will be thinking through that timeline and welcome committee your input or feedback on that. And also to name, I think Maggie and I might be doing some check-in calls with members in the new year, just to sort of say hello, see how you're feeling and doing. So that may be on the way. Maggie, final thoughts?
Just gratitude for everybody's consistent engagement and energy. And I just hope that everybody gets a chance to really step away from Zoom for a good chunk of their holidays and spend some time with people actually right in front of your face.
Yeah, wish we could all drink hot chocolate in front of a fire with you, but go do that somewhere with someone. And thank you all. Happy holidays. We will see you in the new year.